Yo, yo, another week, another hip hop podcast. Look at us, 2 weeks in a row, 2 weeks in a row. As
Magic.
always, it's your boy Mehran. I'm here with the wonderful and illustrious Bria,
What's up, y'all? Happy to be back. I hope you guys are Rona free.
and we have our third host, the great Dave. The great Dave.
What's going on, everybody?
It's been a while since we've all been together.
Yeah.
We are all recording from home right now, so please forgive any difference in sound quality. We're trying to duck the Rona, and given that we do a 40-minute podcast, it's probably better to. However, Bria, I don't know if you want to talk about this. The Trap Factory is open for business, and people are coming.
Yeah, it is. We definitely are very tentative with how we work. But yeah, we're definitely still recording. We try to keep the studio down to a minimum. So, I mean, you can't bring your mans in them, but if you got some shit to lay, then we got you. And if you are super bored and want to start a podcast, we're still doing that too. So hit us up.
Yeah, so just wanted to always
Shout out to
know
Ted.
that that's there whenever y'all need it. So it's been a while since we've been back, especially the three of us all together, and we wanted to do an episode, I think, on the year, and we wanted to highlight in particular one of I think the best years in music for a group that hasn't been seen in, I don't know, 10 years.
G Unit, maybe TDE.
Yeah, maybe I was going to say G Unit might be like the last time we had a year like this for a particular group in music, where it's just one after the other after the other. We're talking about Griselda. This is where Bria does the drop.
I don't have it in me today.
But yeah, so we're talking about the year of Griselda, which is definitely 2020. And it's been a wild ride. They've had so many releases, so many different appearances. They've taken over the entirety of whatever rap game there is. And we wanted to give some context to this here, talk about some of the high points, talk about some of the transition points and some of the cooler shit. But to give us some context, I was hoping Dave, who's been a Griselda fan for a very long time, we have too, but I think Dave's been the longest, to give some kind of some background on like who it is we're dealing with. Not that everyone doesn't already know, but everyone might not know.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy because like we had a Griselda episode in the cut,
We did
and we
from
held
a
it back
year
because
and a
we're
half
like,
ago.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we're like, we didn't really know if people would be up on it, and it like, bam,
Here we are.
yeah. So Griselda Records is primarily made up of West Side Gun, all rappers, West Side Gun, Benny the Butcher, and Conway the Machine, with producer Derringer, and then I guess we can't really talk about it without talking about DJ Shay, who passed away this year as well.
Rest
He's like
peace.
their in-house DJ. And they're from Buffalo. They're probably the only relevant musical act from Buffalo that I can think of besides Rick James.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some more, but I can't really think of any offhand. But they've been around in some capacities since around 2006, but they really sort of took off around, I'll probably say around 2013, 2014 in like the underground circles, mainly with West Side Gun's Hitler Wears Hermes series of mixtapes. I think 1 and 2 dropped in 2013 and 2014. And then you have Conway making his return back into rap after being shot in the neck. And he raps through a condition called Bell's palsy, so half of his face is paralyzed, which I think really adds to sort of the incredibleness of his output of music, because he's working through an extreme physical impairment that does impact his speech. And then Benny the Butcher is the cousin of West Side Gun, and Conway is the half brother of West Side Gun. Benny kind of rose to prominence a little later, maybe around 2015, 2016, but basically they've been on an underground tear since, I'd probably say 2014, and they've pretty much risen to prominence, I would probably say, in 2018. Yeah, that's basically it. They all have, I'm not contrasting, but West Side Gun basically raps sort of like a Ghostface That's not as lyrical as Ghostface, but the extravagance and everything that he brings to the table.
In that same style,
Yeah.
inspired by Ghostface.
Yeah. Whereas like Benny and Conway are very much from that Mobb Deep Locks grimy cloth.
Directly from it, like, and they draw directly from it. I mean, they talk about it on this album, even like going on tour with them and still being in the projects, which is wild, right? That's how like far back they go with the Locks. It's really cool, right? I think those are the main like 3 or 4, and then obviously we're going to talk about Boldy and Armani Caesar later on in the episode, who also had breakout year. But one thing I wanted to hit on was like I think all 3 of them have released. Not I think all 3 of them have released albums this year. So I'll start it off. Which out of the 3, which one was y'all favorite? Go ahead, Bria. Which album was,
out of the 3 that came out this year?
Yeah, out of the 2020 list. So, West Side Gun had Pray for Paris and Fly God is Awesome God. Conway had From a King to a God. West Side also had Who Made the Sunshine. Benny had Burden of Proof.
Okay.
Conway had Lulu. Boldy had Price of Tea in
That's
China.
That's hard.
I know it is
my
hard.
favorite. Yeah, I can have a favorite from each one of them.
All right, go ahead. Favorite from each one.
Favorite
but Benny don't count because Benny only got one.
What a one to have, though. Jesus.
Yeah, for real. But go ahead. Favorite from each one then for this year.
Yeah, From a King to a God is probably my favorite. No. Come back to me. Why was I first? I don't want to be first.
It's your show.
Go ahead, Dave. What's your favorite then? Because I already know my favorite.
I think my favorite out of all of them, and this is very hard, but I am a Boldy James stan. So it's going to be Price of Tea of China, which might be cheating because it's not.
That is cheating because that's what I was going to say, but that's not.
It was before he signed.
From the. That's not fair because that's.
Do you only want me to choose from West Side, Conway, and Benny?
I mean,
that's what I thought.
That's what I was going for.
Because my 100% cheat would have been Price of Tea in China. 100%.
So
if it's just from those 3,
yes, that's what I'm just choosing from. That's what I was choosing from. So yeah,
I think it's From a King to a God.
From a King to a God.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
For me, it's Burden of Proof. Like I'm not even like halfway tripping. Like Burden of Proof by far. To me, it's easily like
it's fucked up though because it's just like God damn, we have so much. Like I even feel bad leaving out West Side shit because West Side shit was all fire.
Well, so it's interesting, right? Pray for Paris, I think, is one of the best produced, and I don't just mean in terms of beats, but produced albums of the year and maybe of the past 5 years. The thing that West Side does so well, and maybe you could speak to this a little more, either one of you, is he creates really, really cinematic albums, right? And he does really, really well with placements of other rappers. Like he had Tyler, he had Joey Badass, he had so many interesting features, and the way he sort of interwove those features into his album and came in and out of songs, like to me, that album was far more. I go to it almost for the cinema rather than the music, if that makes sense. Right? I go to it for the experience. Burden of Proof, I can throw on an individual song and be happy. Pray for Paris, I want to listen to the whole thing through.
Right. He's Diddy.
No, I agree with that.
You said he's the Diddy of Buffalo?
Yeah. That's what his strength. He's not the greatest rapper in the world, but his strength is giving you these well-crafted projects that you can look past his deficiencies in rapping because the music is so damn good.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, to me, he's the most unique. And I mean, that's why I definitely connected to Pray for Paris the most. It's just like how cinematic, but it's how visual it was. And even like the rollout of it. I love the rollout. I love like all like the pictures, the GIFs or the moving images and shit that he had all over his like Instagram and stuff like that. But I like the production value of Pray for Paris probably.
And even down to the cover art, right? Even down to the cover art, Pray for Paris. And so it's weird because I think Pray for Paris is the album that is the best, but Burden of Proof is my favorite, if that makes sense.
No, I feel that. And I did a poll on Instagram a few hours ago just because I wanted to get like the general like public's opinion. And when I asked like who's your Yeah, when I
They
asked,
just tapped
like,
into the streets. Go ahead.
tapped onto the streets and like, yes, what's your favorite Griselda project? And like by a landslide, everyone was like, Pray for Paris. That was the most voted for like answer, but by like, I mean, the second was surprisingly was WWCD. I didn't think that many niggas had listened to
Bro, I
Griselda
forgot about that. Holy
that
shit.
much. Yeah, because that was 2017, and I don't remember anybody really talking about them for real
I
until like
feel
20.
like it had like a re-release or something. For some reason,
No,
people were
no, that came
listening
out
to a
this
lot.
year. That came out this year.
I think it came out 2019 in December, according to Wikipedia, at least. That could be wrong.
I don't know. Even on Apple Music, because I was looking at it earlier today on Apple Music, it's 2017.
2017?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay, well then. While everyone's Googling, I'll fill the space.
Oh, yes, it is. It's 2019. It's 2019.
Yeah, I thought it was 2019. I think they had something else come out in 2017 that's similar name or something, but it was late 2019. So I'm not surprised that people are listening to that because they probably missed it when it came out, right? I think a lot of people missed it when it came out. And that's almost a cheat code because it's all of them together for all the songs.
Yeah.
But so yeah, Pray for Paris, like we've all said, is just wonderfully cinematic, will probably like stand the test of time in a lot of ways, and is a great sort of stage setting for the rest of their albums. To keep it on West Side for a second, I didn't like Who Made the Sunshine. This is probably the only album that I like didn't quite enjoy compared to the rest, right? And this is compared to the Griselda bar. This is not compared to the rest of rap. I liked it better than most of what came out this year. But out of all the albums that were together, because of how well Pray for Paris was put together and because of how beautiful it was, I was a little surprised by Sunshine. But I think Dave felt differently.
I liked it except for that awful verse he had on that Liz Loves Luger song. But other than that, I liked it. You're not the first person who have said that to me. And I kind of, the way I feel about West Side Gun and his music is I know that it's going to be quality enough for me to listen to it. So I'm kind of like, but I also understand that his limitations as a rapper kind of put a cap on how good a project can be sometimes if it's not produced extremely well. I think this is probably like, while I like the production on the album, it's probably like the least interesting production of all the stuff that came out this year from them.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And that was my issue generally. I just feel like it had the least like playback ability out of all the albums that have come out. But also it really wasn't memorable to me. What he was talking about wasn't memorable. But none of the beats are really that memorable. And I mean all the features. The only feature that I really enjoyed on the album was Boldy. But I mean,
Yeah,
there are
you really
plenty.
liked All Praises, right? That was the one song that I think that we.
That was the only song that I kind of go back to. One of the only songs that I kind of go back to and play from the album. It's really that and Ishka Bibble sometimes. Maybe.
It was such a contrast with Pray for Paris, which is what like got me out the way. I was like, I prefer the first thing. You didn't need to release this thing, but still, 2 solid albums in a year for sure. Since we keep coming back to Boldy, let's just talk about Boldy and the price of tea in China. But before we start, can you give a little background of who Boldy James is? Because he wasn't in the original people you mentioned.
Right.
And there's a reason for that.
Right. So Boldy James is from Detroit. He is, I used to joke about him being Chuck English from the Cool Kids' dope dealing cousin. Until like 5 years ago, I found out he was actually Chuck English's dope dealing cousin. So,
wait, you dead ass?
Yeah, for sure. He's from Detroit. He's been less prominent in the underground, I guess, because he didn't used to release a lot of music, but he definitely had one of my favorite albums of like the 2010s. He had my first chemistry set with Alchemist in like 2012, I think, 2012, 2011. But he's been one of my favorite rappers forever just because he has such a unique voice. And like, it's kind of like same way I feel about Freddie Gibbs. Like his voice is kind of like an instrument. And he has bars, obviously. And then, his sequel to that, The Price and Tea of China, came out at the top of this year. And then like 2 weeks later, he signed to Griselda Records.
It's wild that that came out before he signed to Griselda. Like
Right.
what a debut album to have.
Right.
Bria, you said this was going to be your favorite. Why was it going to be your favorite in terms of albums?
I to me it's just one of the most solid as far as like lyricism, and also this album probably has like my favorite as far as like beat selection in general. I mean, Alchemist did the whole project, right? Pretty sure he produced the whole project.
He did, yeah.
In most of my favorite beats, like honestly, I kind of like all the production on this entire album, and that's probably one of my favorite things about it. Even though this came out before he was signed to Griselda, this project to me is the most balanced. As far as what I've gotten from the rest of the Griselda.
Is balanced in terms of like content?
Yeah, content, and I just rap ability and production value. I feel like it made the most sense to me. And I mean, I guess he was obviously the one I was the most unfamiliar with. And I like that I took away from this project. I feel like I understood him way more.
That's the other thing I got out of Price and T in China. So I feel like I got to know Boldy James a lot better. And
kind of more in certain ways. And I feel like, I know the rest of him.
I think that for me, I kind of echo the same sentiments, and I think that comes from the fact that he has been making music on that level for a very long time. Like he's been working with Alchemist and like top tier producers for almost a decade now, consistently. So I think he understands how to put a project together better than some other people on Griselda who basically been doing it themselves for a long time and just coming into their own with like working with like big name producers and artists and stuff like that. You know, because like Alchemist doesn't just work with anybody.
Yeah.
He's very selective.
But also I just feel like, you know, Boldy has for me as a fan of his, he's often struggled with putting it all together sometimes. Like it's either you get the bars or you get like good production, but maybe a little lackluster bars here and there sometimes. But I think with the Price and Tea in China, and even like all of his stuff with Griselda since then, and even a little bit before then, he's really put it all together in a way. He's kind of like coming into his prime, like in his late 30s.
Yeah, I sure would agree.
There's two things there, right? It's like, number one, it's important to remember that it's interesting where hip hop is a very young person's game. All of Griselda is kind of old comparatively to like a lot of like who runs this game. So that's kind of cool to watch, is like to watch people in their, late 30s, in their 30s kind of come into their own as rappers. And the point that you made, Dave, about how Boldy's been working a long time with major producers, but the majority of Griselda has been in-house through Derringer for so long, right? That's like been their guy, that's their style, that's their sound. One of the reasons they're having such an epic 2020 is because they're actually, well, not because they're actually, as in they weren't, but like because they now have the opportunity to work with different sounds, because Benny could work with Hit Boy, because they can work with Alchemist and things like Lulu and stuff like that. You're able to get the next level of Griselda. That's been such a huge propellant towards like their, I guess, stardom. Like this Benny and Hit Boy thing is a way that I've never heard Benny before, right? Like Benny's last album, like last two albums, right? Like Tana Talk 3 and The
Plugs I Met.
Yeah, The Plugs I Met. There you go. And the difference between The Plugs I Met, Tana Talk 3, and this album is this album's the first one where he has the beats to quote unquote, I think, go like mainstream or mainstream-esque, right? Everything that Hit Boy's been doing this year has straddled the line between like, okay, this is pure coke rap, like this is so like hardcore, and this is like something you can play on the radio.
Right.
And that's why I like Burden of Proof so much. And that's why for me, I can throw on any song and it has so much replayability. And for me, that's why it's my favorite.
I do think it has a lot of it's kind of all I've been playing since it came out on Friday. It definitely is up there. Even as far as like, the one I kind of keep going back to. I mean, and I'll see in a couple of weeks when it's not as new, but I think this song also this album has a lot of my favorite like features from Griselda so far. At this point, honestly, I feel like we can't even talk about Griselda without talking about Freddie Gibbs, because there's not a project that I feel like they drop that Freddie isn't on and doesn't fucking kill. But I really like the Freddie sample, and I don't know why I would never expect to hear Lil Wayne and Big Sean on the same song, but
And he'd be good.
I never would. Yeah, like I would never ask that or request that or even but it's cool. And Dom Kennedy too. And yeah, almost every time I would hear it's like, is this? Because I always look when I listen to the album for the first time. I try not to look and like see who's featured. I just like to listen through it for the first time. So for this, only one that wasn't really surprising was Rick Ross. But after hearing Wayne and Big Sean, I was like, this is weird. And then like 2 songs later, I heard Dom Kennedy. It's like, this is weird. But none of it was bad. None of the features I feel like were.
I think all of them were amazing, right? Like I think Lil Wayne like rapped like Lil Wayne 10 years ago, which was really nice to hear.
Which I feel like he only does when he's featured at all, period.
Yeah, only on features does he do that at this point. And on top of that, like I don't think he raps without like having a good rapper next to him, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like Benny in a lot of ways pushes Wayne to be who Wayne is. This is the first Big Sean verse I've liked since possibly ever. I don't really like Big Sean. I'm gonna keep it real.
It's been damn near a decade. I'm not even gonna lie. Maybe that's harsh, but it's been a while.
No, it's not harsh at all. I
like this control verse. I did like his control verse.
It was alright. It was the weakest on the song.
I mean, yeah, but that's not his fault.
I like his verse on KO, that 2 Chainz song.
I don't know if you guys hold this same sentiment, but I feel like this Benny and Hit Boy album is very reminiscent of like Rockefeller music, like their music from like the early 2000s.
In what way?
About it.
Like I think the one thing that stands out to me is Famous using the dramatic sample. Like that's very much like early Rockefeller. And it just the way that all of the early Rockefeller music was still like true to themselves, but it also appealed to like the mainstream sound. It just seems, and like I'm pretty sure Guru mixed and mastered it too, so that might play a role in it as well. But like, it just really felt like that Rockefeller Records quality from like the early 2000s. Like
I kind of feel that. Yeah, I feel that with Famous and also like Legend. I feel that with especially Legend being like the last song and how it tied it out. It felt very like that, and also I don't know, really, it kind of reminded me of what Compton. What album was Compton on? And then they like that was the last song on it too, and it was real like I don't know the word for it.
Like big, like grandiose.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, it had the production from like back then, and then it also had like the skits from when Dipset was on Rockefeller. Like it was just like it just reminded me. It was a very nostalgically feeling album.
I think a lot of that is due to Hit Boy, right? I think Hit Boy has gone for that sound all year. Like he went for that same kind of sound when he did this album with Nas, and like he's doing that kind of impression for all the rappers who can rap. You know, and it goes especially well with Benny because, like you said, he comes from the same line of rappers. So, of course, that production works extra well with him. So I think for sure, like, Benny has a special place in Hit Boy's, like, production folder. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about Conway's From a King to a God, too, because I don't want to, like, forget about him. And we've hit on like most of it. Conway also had, and we should also probably talk about Lulu as well, because both those projects were super solid.
I think From a King to a God is his best project to date.
Like ever? I think so too.
Because like I probably listened to Conway more than any of the other ones, just because he stuck out to me as my favorite early on. And like for me, his biggest issue has always been his consistency. Like not so much with the bars, but just like the effort that I think he puts into his music can go up and down. But with From a King to a God, I think it was I felt like he was focused the most on this album. And then also we get a lot of him that we haven't really got before. Like he talked about subject matters and things that he hasn't really spoke on in depth, like the Still Dropping Tears with El Camino was mainly about DJ Shay. And like he talked a lot about his pain growing up, the Bell's palsy and stuff like that he doesn't really touch on a lot. And I feel like it made it more the vulnerability that he showed in his album made it better to me because
Mm.
it showed a different side that we just haven't really gotten a lot before.
It definitely made it realer. I think him and Benny both, in terms of subject matter, expanded this year, right?
Hmm.
Because on Burden of Proof, one of my favorite songs is Benny talking about, his brother dying
Hmm.
and talking about like his mom being a single mom and what that meant. And like you said, Conway talking about his Bell's palsy. I think they've made the leap from just exclusively coke raps and just exclusively, like drug dealing raps and stuff like that to more of a personal, more vulnerable side. And they've made that leap at just the right time with just the right sound. And it's caused like a
Mm.
huge swell.
Right.
And like it's interesting, right? Because they're all from Buffalo, as you pointed out. I think they reflect Buffalo really well. They talk about this a little bit in a couple interviews they've had. Buffalo is a very emblematic city of like the American landscape in a lot of ways. Like there's kind of like been this black cloud over a lot of American cities with people like leaving them and, a lot of crime that's been popping up and stuff like that. And there's a story there that needs to be told that isn't necessarily being told in a lot of spaces in rap music today, especially not on like the big stage. And Griselda is telling that story in a way that most rappers can't because they don't have the skill to do so. And I think one of the reasons this resonated so well in 2020 is because that story, especially with the onset of the pandemic and everything else, has become accelerated in a lot of places. And people are more and more gravitating towards that message and towards the idea of like, hey, there's a lot of shit going on outside. I want rappers who can rap about real shit.
Right. And I feel like one thing when you talk about authenticity in rap music and like people being like true to themselves, a lot of like quote unquote street rappers exaggerate their stories, and it's just like,
Mm.
especially with Conway, probably maybe more than everyone else in Griselda, like he wears that realness on his face. Like you can see it, the
Quite literally.
results of
Yeah.
like the fruits of his labor, quote unquote. Like you see it every day. So there's no denying his authenticity. There's no real denying Benny's authenticity. Westside Gun puts all of these like crazy ass jail references that you really only understand if you went to prison.
Yeah.
But like he wears that's like his like you wouldn't understand what I'm talking about unless you've been there. And I think they all exude that in their own
And I
ways.
think when you do that, there's a sense, even if you can't understand or empathize with a lot of the experiences, there's a sense that you get from the music. There's a sense of confirmation, like when you know, right? Like
Hmm.
what something real looks like when you see it, right? It's that whole real recognize real thing. And I think more than anything, especially in the way mainstream hip hop is treated, and I sound like an angry backpacker right now. Especially in the way mainstream hip hop is treated, a lot of that was lacking, right?
Hmm.
So they filled a void, and when they filled that void, they opened up a floodgate as well. And now they're able to release pretty much whatever they want when they want, and it'll be well received. Do y'all think like they're doing too much? Do you think they're gonna need to slow down, or is this gonna like oversaturate stuff? Like if you're their punch, Bria, do you let them release?
If it is remotely, or if it's on the same quality level, sure. I mean, the only thing that kind of scares me a little bit is West Side's last project, Sunshine Jump. But I mean, I still enjoyed it. So quality level, I mean, I might think about it, but I also would try and do more of the cyclical thing that I feel like Punch does and kind of, have another like Boldy project or have another Armani project. Because I feel like the three mains have been pretty consistent and I feel like they kind of have a run now to where they can really shed light on the other one. So, I mean, I'm excited to hear more from Armani Caesar because I think that was actually the last project I've listened to. And I actually really enjoyed it. And I mean, she's spoken on having this whole, trying to do like a whole lady Griselda or whatever, and trying to like bring more female MCs under her wing. So I mean, I would love for Armani to drop because she says she has hella shit that she can't wait to drop as soon as all her brothers are done. But why does she have to wait for her brothers to be done? I don't think she has to wait. she should drop some shit now. So I mean, that's what I would do, is try to sneak more of the new niggas in there, quote unquote new niggas.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Boldy had his 3 this year too, so I think maybe they should focus on Armani. They also have another guy on there, El Camino, who's actually probably like my second favorite artist in Griselda for real. I think he doesn't really get a lot of love because he's, like I said, just still developing him out though. But like he was the one singing on Still Dropping Tears. He had verses on Who Made the Sun Shine. He was on Pray for Paris. He was on the Versace tape. So he's pretty spread out amongst their verses too. And he's dropped his own solo projects this year as well.
It's been a crazy year for them. They've been working everything, right? I didn't think I would see a Benny or a Conway Tiny Desk, but I have both. Right? And like NPR Tiny Desk and Griselda Records are not exactly what I associate with each other. Benny himself has been up to like Joe Budden's podcast like a number of times just to sit in and talk with them, which like is unusual. Like I think this year they've really turned the corner on media stuff. So it would be interesting to see if they took next year to be like, okay, we've built this base. Let's propel everyone else under us now.
Yeah, well, Westside Gunn's retiring at the end of the year.
Talk about that. Like he's like done?
Yeah, he said he has Hitler Wears Hermes 8, 9. I think it's 8, but that's dropping 8, on Halloween. And then he has one more dropping in December, and then he's done. He said that like 2 years ago that he was going to retire in 2020. And he seems to be sticking to that. So I think he's going to become like the actual like Diddy
executive
role.
Producer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's that pretty much. I think I also want to touch on the fact that Westside Gunn specifically does a great job of like putting other artists on. Yes. So even like if you go back to like 2014, 2015, he was the first person that, at least to me, exposed Makami to everyone. And like the guy Fahim. Drew had a name a little bit before that, but he was on Fly God. And then like this year he got Stove God Cooks, who was like the rookie of the year to me. And even like producers, like this is the first time I ever heard Conductor Williams, and he's become one of my favorite producers right now. So they do a good job of like finding like obscure or somewhat unknown artists, and sort of giving them a platform to shine on their albums too.
That's all technically like part of like the lo-fi sound, right? Or not really.
I don't know. I hate that term, but yeah, I guess. Because like, what does that even mean?
I don't know. Well, I mean, supposedly it's a production style, right?
Right, but like the production
it means vibes.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Cause I don't want to make the podcast about that, but like they lump Jay Dilla into this whole lo-fi category when none of his music is lo-fi. But
that's true. Nothing about Jay Dilla is lo-fi.
It's the vibes. You can't make a genre. You can't label a genre vibey.
Because like lo-fi is bad to me. Lo-fi is like bad. Like if you're gonna say, oh, this is lo-fi quality, that's horrible.
I'm about to say Jay Dilla is hi-fi, but like I'm just curious because like a lot of the people you mentioned often get lumped into that lo-fi. Like,
I think this is another word because people don't want to use like real hip hop or like backpack or all the other cliche names. So
people just got tired of all the old labels, so they made a new one.
It's just fucking rap music, bro. Just call it rap music. It's all.
Yeah, I might say I just called it rap because that's what it is. But hey. Whatever the kids are saying these days. I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways that Griselda can go. They've done a great job. Like the introduction of Armani Caesar was done at just at the right time. Like her debut album was great. I think that, and I could be wrong on this, they are going to probably all retire within 3 years. And the reason I say that is because their work rate has been so high, and it seems like they're setting up to be set, right? They have a huge like clothing label thing too, right? That's like a big part of their I guess their income, like is their clothing stuff, is like they get really into the merch and whatnot.
Yeah,
They really work hard on the tour circuit, so I'm assuming that comes back. I'm sure they'll go back touring. All of them have like given me the impression that like yes, they're really good rappers, but I don't know how much more they want to like release 4 projects a year. So we might
mm,
end up getting them not like pure retirement, but maybe like one project every 2 years or something like that further down the line.
I can see that. I think Benny's here to stay though. I think he's gonna blow up.
I think he could cross over, like legitimately.
Yeah,
I think Benny the Butcher could cross over into like whatever space is outside of like the mainstream of hip hop to a certain extent.
yeah. I have a feeling he's gonna occupy kind of like a Rick Ross lane in
Yeah.
mainstream rap music.
I was gonna say like almost like Pusha.
He's more dynamic than Pusha, I think, in terms of like
And
mainstream music. I saw that comparison on my timeline. I was like, okay, whatever. They rap about drugs, so that's a lazy comparison. But I think Benny has a better like ear for mainstream sounding music than Pusha T, and he's also like 13 years younger, which doesn't really matter. Yeah,
I'm
Benny's
about
young.
to
He's like
say,
33, 34. He's not as old as like Conway and West Side Gun.
got you. Okay.
Um, so I think his ear for music and where he wants to go with his music is like a different sort of lane than where I think Pusha T occupies.
So you think more Rick Ross. That's
Yeah.
interesting. We'll see. We'll see. Is there anything else we wanted to add?
No, I think that's it for me at least.
All right, that was us talking about Griselda. It's been one of our favorite groups, and like we said, one of the hottest runs in hip hop in a long time. Feel free to comment like anything that we missed, anything that we should have talked about more. Maybe next time we'll get a little more into Armani Caesar when she releases another album. We're really looking forward to that. And yeah, unless y'all got anything to add, I guess we should get out of here.
I'm good.
Nope, I think that's it.